So, as you know, this is a little introduction or a little overview of what I do when I'm teaching English for social justice, and it's maybe tipping my hat to CLIL as well, the content and language integrated learning, that maybe you guys already know about it. Do you know? Are you familiar with that concept?
With the social justice, yes.
With the CLIL, content and language integrated learning. If you're not, you will be.
I am very interested to know.
Okay, great. So basically, it's about incorporating a subject matter into your English language courses, and in this case, social justice. I wrote here civic and peace education, but if we think about it, it's more like education for peace and education for social justice, English for social justice. So if I give you a little background to me, first of all, and how did I get to social justice in the first place? Well, I've been teaching English for about 17 years now in several countries, Thailand, Myanmar, obviously. Also, I've been teaching in Australia, where I did my master's, and then I also taught in London. And one thing was consistent throughout, all of my travels teaching English, and that was that I was, in one way or another, teaching English to refugee students. So, for example, in London, I was teaching Colombian migrants and refugees, and then I was also in Australia teaching Myanmar and Sudanese refugees. And then, of course, when I came to Myanmar, that was the story of having spent a lot more time in refugee camps. So I started moving into Myanmar because the country was starting to open up. Mostly I was on the border with Thailand and Myanmar, moving from camp to camp and giving teacher trainings. So these experiences that I had kind of evolved me from being just an English language teacher to an English language teacher with social justice values, I guess you could say. Okay, and hence the webinar today. So I really hope it's useful for you guys. I want to know also, a little bit about your backgrounds. I think we can do that, right? Because there's only a few of us. So who wants to go first? How did you get to this point where you've wanted to click on this webinar today about English for social justice? Who wants to go first? Tiff, I can't hear you.
Okay, I go.
Tiff, I muted you. I'm sorry because of your keyboard tick, 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 tick sound.
Okay. Yeah, so for me, this is something that's really close to what I do anyway. We call it by a different name. Luckily, there's a few of us that work in public sector English language teaching that have evolved to this point ourselves and then just support each other in developing it as practice. So we call it ESOL as emancipatory practice, which is to look beyond simply the linguistic content of lessons and move towards social and political contexts, which is really pretty close to what you're doing. And so we develop all of our resources to try and tackle that, which means we teach off book quite a lot, which isn't always very popular. And I just found a link actually, which I'll share with everybody, which was a discussion we had about something called Parsnip, aka why your course book is so boring. It's all the things you're supposed to not talk about in a class: politics and religion, sex, nudity, isms, and pork. And so it's a starter point for saying, yeah, these are all the things that in theory they teach you never to talk about. But Zoe, obviously for you, these are the things that we cannot avoid talking about.
Yeah, quite right. I mean, you part of the webinar today is also talking about how to create a safe space first of all before you start talking about all the dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, it's fundamental. It's necessary before you start doing that.
Yeah, you have to have that. You have to put all the energy at the start into the trust and the bonds between yourselves and the students, and also there's ways and ways of approaching that. I go for a kind of flat, horizontal, non-hierarchical, very Athenian, anarchistic point of view, but certainly non-hierarchical is the way that works for me.
Sounds good, thank you. Is anyone, who's next?
Okay, Carmen.
Carmen.
Yes, hi. I will say that, okay, for me, all my life, more or less, I am working for social justice, and I decided that education is the most revolutionary and the key to really be free and get the justice in our society, in our world. So for me, it's a key instrument, not only the language, but the education in itself. So for that reason, when I saw what Colette sent, I said, okay, that is great. This is really, and so I think all the subjects need to be teaching from this type of values if we want to change this world.
Absolutely, yeah. And values, again, values is something, you know, we have to maybe compartmentalize and start talking about values as well as the skills. It's not just language, it's not just the knowledge, but it's also how to kind of transform people, recognizing that they are changing, you know, their values. And there's a lot of reflection that goes into that. I really hope that, you know, because my background is in English language teaching, not necessarily in human rights. So I hope that doesn't dissuade you, you know, from picking up these techniques. It's I'm framing English language, or I'm framing this webinar from an English language teacher perspective, but because of my passions, because of my values, I want to feed in the human rights and the social justice aspects too. So I hope that doesn't put you off.
No, absolutely. Okay. Because what in this moment, practically, our center is has more classes in languages. So to have the possibility to put this from the point of view of language is, for me, is great element.
Wonderful, good stuff. Yeah. All right. How do is it Athanasia? Is that how I pronounce your name? Can you hear me? Athanasia, are you there?
Welcome to every day of my Zoom class life.
What are they doing in the background without the camera? Yes, that's a question. Oh, okay.
Is one business is the type of internet.
Oh,
the internet
yeah.
Connection sometimes is much better, or at least lasts longer if you don't put the video.
That's true. That's true.
Athanasia, yeah, just put something in the chat. She's using the chat.
That might be actually a good warning for you guys. Sometimes the power goes off here as well. So if that happens, you might have me just frozen in the spot for a minute until I get my phone data. So just a little pre-warning for you. Okay, so I'll just move on then, shall I?
Athanasia just wrote that social justice is an issue that is related to her university studies. So that's why she's here today.
Ah, okay, wonderful. All right, well, thank you. Welcome, as I said, to the webinar. I really I'm glad that you guys are coming from a range of backgrounds, and you know, that will hopefully feed into the discussions that we have today as well. Also, a little warning for you guys, it is going to be quite interactive. So I hope you don't mind. Okay. So maybe if I put you guys into there, okay. Whoop. So as we talked about, you know, the safe space, what we were talking about with Tiff just now, the safe space that we have to create, it also depends on how we act as a teacher in the classroom. So this is what I'm going to start off with, is the foundational skills that we both have to model to our students, and then also that we want them to practice. So the model behaviors, and the overall aim is to create that safe and inclusive, productive, definitely productive, as it is an English language classroom, but generally, you know, when you multiply that or zoom out onto society, we want a productive society as well. And then a respectful society, a respectful learning environment. So a question for you. What is the difference? What's the difference between a value and a skill? Does anyone want to share what they think?
For me, value is, if I can put an image, I will say it's a motor. It's where I got energy and give a type of flavor to my action. A skill is something that I am capable to do. I can do well, I can do bad. It's just in the practical aspect.
So the skill is the practical, and the value is the motivator.
Yes.
Okay.
In simple definitions.
All right. Anyone want to add to that? Yes, Tim?
I would put kind of simply, I would just say the value is the why and the skill is the how.
So the
why am I doing this? How am I doing this?
Okay. Athanasia? Okay.
She might be typing some. Yeah, she's typing. She says, I would agree with Carmen in terms of skill. So being practical, a skill is practical.
So the practical, the how you do something, and the value is the why you do something.
Yeah, and the value is more ethical, she says.
Aha, right. So
you could also add that skill is something that you learn, and a value might be intrinsic. You might learn the value from someone else, but it could also just be a value that's intrinsic and that you hold quite apart from anyone around you.
And this is something that maybe would happen as a result of your classes as well. This, that you have an intrinsic value, but then maybe through the activities that you're taken through, maybe you transform and you change those values. Maybe you add another value, and that's the reason why you want to behave in a certain way, want to practice a certain skill. So, minimize you guys again. The importance, basically, the value, the reason why. So yes, there's the why and the how. The value is why you behave in a certain way. And then the practical, the actual behavior that you develop, the skill, the competency, the capacity, as you said, is you develop that because you value it. Okay. The reason why I want to define that is because we're now going to move a little bit more in depth into values. Okay, so next question for you. What values are most necessary for a peaceful and prosperous society? I know it's such a large question, but the idea is to brainstorm what are the possible values that we can have, that we can cherish, and that should navigate or control our actions or influence our actions. This picture is from a teacher training that I did recently. Monitoring is a bit of a random one, but that came from the fact that it was a teacher training, that the teachers were thinking about what would make a safe and productive environment in their classrooms. So sense of belonging is a value. Gender equity, they thought was a value for them to, as a principle to teach by, and then non-discrimination. So can you guys think of any other values that might be necessary, but this time for a peaceful and prosperous society? We can just whizzle through, just throw ideas at me.
Collaboration.
Elaboration. Okay.
Justice and honesty.
Nice. What do you mean by elaboration, Colette?
Collaboration.
Collaboration, I got you.
Yeah, okay. So it's a bit like sharing knowledge. Not very original.
No, absolutely. Collaboration, teamwork, working together. It needs to be for a prosperous society. What else do we have? Any others?
I'm going to throw in equality.
Equality.
And empathy.
Okay. One or two more? I like empathy. That's the word of every day for me. Trying to kind of bring that out.
Anna Cecilia says collaboration, inclusion, and respect.
Inclusion, respect. Nice. Yes, definitely. So including people, not discriminating, allowing every voice in your classroom. Yeah. Okay. So here is. Sorry.
Protection.
Okay. Nice. Protection. Do you want to elaborate on that?
I was thinking, if we have empathy and we want to include people, maybe those that are most vulnerable also need to have more protection, and we recognize that when we see.
Yeah, because maybe like a shy colleague or whoever, and you want to, stick out for that person, right? And give them protection because you empathize where they're, coming from, something like that, right?
Yeah, but if we had a peaceful and nice society, we wouldn't need to protect each other because there would be no vulnerability. Well, there might still be, but
yeah, this is true. But if everybody was out to protect each other, then it would be a happy, definitely happy society, right?
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do
could be also.
Oh, happiness. Yeah, definitely. If we're all striving to be happy, but then the question of liberty as well. If you are striving for happiness and then you step on somebody else's happiness.
But that is okay. It's not necessary to discuss, but the real happiness never will harm others. And now, in the moment when you, in the sense of equality, in the sense of empathy, are englobing all that, and so you will not overstep others, you will not harm others, and you will find that sometimes you give and sometimes you need to refrain. So it's a kind of balance also, internal balance. The real happiness has internal balance.
So what you're saying is happiness is also, it's got its necessary additional values as well.
I would say is when you are happy, you are content, it's more easy to build a peaceful society. But at the same time, if you are in a peaceful society, you will be happy. So it's a cycle.
Yes, that's right. Okay, now I'm gonna take you through, or maybe have you guys do an activity. And the idea is that you use those values that you just gave me. You negotiate with each other and you think of which one would be the highest priority. Which value would you prioritize the most for a peaceful and prosperous society? And then which two would be kind of your second highest priority to develop in your students? And then which three would be your third highest priorities? So for example, in your highest priority, maybe the highest priority could be the happiness. That is what we want to build overall. And then in order to build that, what are your second highest? Maybe respect. Respect is implicit in that, or it's necessary in order to get to your highest priority, which is your happiness. Okay, so I'm not going to step in with this one. I'm going to ask you guys to talk to each other and decide what would be your group's priority for values that are necessary for a peaceful and prosperous society.
Big questions for a Saturday afternoon.
I know. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Just establishing the tone. So I
thought of another value. I thought of curiosity.
For you. Yes. What's the other value?
Curiosity. I mean, we did a thing where it's like not judgment, but curiosity. But I don't think it should be the highest priority. But
nice. I like it. So working
for me,
together.
one of the in the base of this pyramid, this one will be respect. One of the three highest need to be respect.
Carmen, do you think it needs to be the top priority? Respect. For
me, I will not put on the top because the respect will lead me to discover the truth, and discovering the truth, I will practice justice. So somehow in my heart, justice is one of the highest priority, but to get there, you need to start with building up other values first.
Is justice a value? I suppose it is, yes. So do you think that respect should be on the third or the second, Carmen?
I will put in the third.
Okay.
I do not know others, what they think about that.
Go on.
They're all quite, they're all in kind of like dependent relationships, so many of them. Like to say that without this will not grow, and without this will not grow. So it's quite hard to then prioritize which one you would have first to grow the next one.
Yeah. Well, maybe as a base layer, we could say curiosity, because I mean that in like you're interested to learn about other people's lives, but you're not judging them. You're just you're interested.
Does that work?
So do you think maybe similar to that then would be empathy on the same level, or would you put it higher? Because empathy is obviously linked to curiosity in the sense of you're wanting to find out how it really feels to be that person.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's kind of linked to curiosity.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Maybe slightly more intense curiosity.
I actually can't remember all the values we said now. So
equality, respect, collaboration, inclusion.
Yes, that's a good point.
The second, I will put collaboration.
Yeah. And then I would have inclusion. I don't know if it was me.
Yeah.
Collaboration and inclusion seem quite linked together as well.
Yeah,
Yes,
and you can't
they are
really
very
include
linked.
people until you understand them. Sorry, Carmen, what did you say? I cut you up.
No, I also agree with that. Collaboration and inclusions are very tight together to each other.
If it was me, this one was the easiest to do because equality. For me, without equality, then the rest all vanish. And if you live in a society where you have social inequality, then you'll never have any of the rest anyway.
But should it be equity rather than equality? Because equity is about ensuring that those most vulnerable get more resources in order to be on the same level as.
I would go with that. I would be prepared to go with that. But what do other people think?
I will go more for justice in the higher priority. But I can agree also with equity.
Again, they're really they're ideas that cross over, aren't they?
Yeah, Athanasia also says social justice, but then if you have equity, you have justice in a sense, like you're saying, Tiff.
Built into your system.
Yeah. Yeah, that's better.
It's much better. Yeah.
There's a compromise.
Yeah, very good.
So is everyone happy with that?
Yeah, I want to live there.
Yeah.
There is that place.
Yeah, I would love to live there as well. So, okay. So the highest priority for us is justice and equity. And then following suit would be collaboration and inclusion, which is kind of very closely linked anyway. And obviously you need empathy for all of those things, empathy, respect, and a curiosity. I suppose curiosity is about wanting to grow, right? Wanting to learn more about other people. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how I imagine it. Yeah. Interest and a willingness to find out more.
Right. Interest and willingness to find out more about other people. And then you have your, maybe the problems with inclusion, discrimination, maybe those are taken away because you have that established, that sort of want to learn about the world.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is our, say, social contract, and that is what we're going to strive for within the rest of this lesson. We're going to strive for all of these wonderful values right here. So don't forget. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the next slide. So this is another activity that I've done with my students or my trainees. Social thermometer. Has anyone else used this activity before?
No.
Normally, what happens is you line, when it's in non-COVID circumstances, you line everybody up in the center of the classroom, and on the one side you have agree, a piece of paper saying agree. On the other side you have a piece of paper saying disagree.
Yeah, I've used something similar, Zoe. It's quite a flexible thing. You can do it for a lot of different subjects.
Yes, definitely. I mean, there's that element of debate in there, so it's an automatic kind of English, go-to as well.
You can do it on Zoom as well. You just have to tweak it so it's screens off if you agree, screens on if you don't agree, or hands up, hands down. Nice.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to also show you another way, which is just for small groups. It's only going to work for us because there's only 4 of us, or 5 of us. But I'm going to get you guys to choose one of those issues. Are there any of these lines, any of these sentences that don't make any sense to you or need clarification?
Describe. Could you define? Don't make any sense.
So if, for example, because it's a double negative, without a job, money or education, a person is not free. Sometimes my teachers and students, they get kind of confused about that. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay. So is everyone happy to choose one statement?
Sorry, the statement is that not make a sense.
Well, I first of all wanted to know if all of that, in all of these sentences, they make sense to you. They don't need clarifying. Is that right?
Yeah, they are pretty clear for me.
Okay, so the second question is, which one would you choose to talk about? Which one do you want to talk about?
Would you like us to say?
No need. I'm just giving you some time to read. Not yet, actually. That's coming next. Okay, can I move on to the next slide?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, can anyone define for me what is active listening? There's listening and there's active listening. What's the difference?
I know, but I was seeing if anybody else was going to speak. Tiff, do you know, Carmen?
So I would say active listening is listening that, first of all, while you're listening, you are communicating non-verbally that you are engaged and you're interested and you're taking the information in, and then I would call it listening with a purpose.
Listening with a purpose, yeah.
You're preparing to. You're aware that a response will be welcomed or required, and so therefore you need to take that in with. So you're listening, preparing to digest, and then respond to the information.
So listening and knowing that you have to digest it, not just listening and then forgetting.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, I think what I try to get across to our students is finding ways of non-verbally communicating while the person is making their point. It's nice if you communicate to them that you are actually still there with them, whether it's through nodding or small noises or. That's really important.
like what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
So yes, nodding, giving them nonverbal cues, saying that I am listening to you. This is, I'm looking in your eyes. I'm nodding. I'm giving you encouragement. So that's active listening. Yes, you're actively taking in the information, and then you're also at the same time encouraging the speaker.
If you've ever done speaking and listening assessments in pairs, you'll know how important it is to teach active listening.
Yes, absolutely. So there again is the connection between English and social justice. What would happen in the world, if we didn't have active listening?
I think we're looking at it right now, no?
I was just about to say the same
that
thing.
is what has happened today in many places.
Yes, exactly. Just look out the window. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So as Carmen said, this is my belief as well, that it starts with education. If you're not demonstrating in the classroom to your students these techniques, and if they're not able to practice it, with your guidance, with your monitoring, and develop these skills, maybe that's what we end up with, the world that is outside our window right now. So if you remember the activity just now, the values pyramid, what were you doing, during the activity as you were discussing with each other? What skills were you using actually?
listening.
Yes. Were you using active listening? Yes. What else were you using?
Analysis, like critically thinking about the choice.
Critical thinking. Yeah.
Of the value.
Mm. And then also when you're nodding and you're accepting, you know, what are you doing? Or if you have a view and then somebody else says something and then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, well, you're using non-verbal active listening or non-verbal cues.
Non-verbal cues.
I would also say that we were making decisions by consensus.
Consensus, yes. Yes. So consensus compromise, would you say, as well?
I
Making
prefer
some
consensus.
compromises? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get to that in a second. So let's practice a little bit of active listening. I'm only going to do this very, very quickly, although maybe that goes against the idea of active listening. But does anybody want to demonstrate this with me? I'm going to demonstrate it for you. The first step is first person, that's me, argues their point. And then the second person, the person I'm talking to, paraphrases what I've said. The next step is the first person confirms, or me rather, confirms your understanding that it is correct. And then that's when you give your response, after you've paraphrased, after you've confirmed that your understanding is correct. And then it goes back to me again, and I paraphrase what you have just said. And then the second person, you confirm or you say, no, that's not what I meant.
It's starting to feel like relationship counseling.
Yeah. There we go. Maybe this is a way to motivate, the students who are not really interested in social justice. So who would like to practice this? Just a demo with me. Can I have a volunteer?
I nominate Tiff. He's got his microphone off.
Okay. And yeah, I suppose it's about gender equality. As the only male in the group, I should demonstrate that men are actually capable of it in theory, even if we don't do it often enough in society.
Oh boy! Okay, maybe that should be the point then. Maybe this is what we're arguing.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. Okay, so I'm gonna go for social media. So I think that actually social media it does more harm than good, because they're, as we have said in education, if you're not given the right education, if you're not prepared to actively listen to people, there's a danger that you're going to say things that you haven't really critically thought about. You haven't really thought about what you've said before you say it, and there's not a lot of restrictions for people saying things on social media, and then understanding the critical kind of understanding of what that person has said and why they've said it. For me, it does more danger, or more harm than good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so your basic position is that social media does more harm than good, and you were thinking about that in the context of education, and that people tend to speak in a way that's maybe more unfiltered than would normally. Things just come out, and that they're not really thinking about what they've said or the repercussions of that, and that broadly is why social media does more harm than good.
That's right, because maybe there's sometimes that we haven't actually learnt, or we haven't really developed the skills for active listening or critical reading to be able to think before we speak.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay, so now it's time for my opinion, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's hard. Sometimes I'm not sure whether, it's an intergenerational thing, but broadly, yeah, I think it definitely it has a negative impact on our ability to empathize, and it has a really negative impact on our ability to discuss things and really take on to be comfortable with difficult or opposing views. And in a world that's increasingly diverse, I think that's a dangerous thing.
So what you're saying is it tends to be, you know, more one-sided because of social media, right? That the only voice that really matters is your own, and because we're not empathizing, we're not discussing. Is that right?
Yeah, and also if you look at the way that discussions often go on social media, the actual quality of the debate is really, really poor. It's very rare that you come away saying, actually, yeah, I started off not agreeing with that, but do you know what? I think you might be right. Said no one ever on social media. So the quality of the debate is really poor, and quite often maybe aggressive and negative.
Or there's a like, or the opposite of like, something like that. Okay, thank you, Tiff. That was wonderful. Round of applause. So that was the demonstration of you know, a technique in active listening. Sometimes I take my students or my teachers, my trainees through this practice as a kind of foundational activity before we start talking about social justice issues. I'm gonna whiz through the next bit. First, we've done values pyramids. The second part we've done is active listening. The next activity I often do is a non-violent feedback, a little input into, you know, what kind of feedback we should be giving each other after the work that we've done. So for example, our students do presentations or they do collaborative projects, and then often in English you get students to evaluate each other's work, peer correct. I often, you know, before a training or before a class or during a class, integrate something to do with nonviolent feedback. And then both of these combined, active listening, nonviolent feedback, this is what I call communication for peace. So skills that we learn for peace. I'm going to whiz through the next. So for example, why did you do that? This is an example of a violent style of feedback. What did you do that for? Something like that. Or you should have done this, or you should have done that, or what you did was really dumb. So why did you do that? Well, how can we translate that into non-violent feedback? So this is the activity that I might, you know, get them to do, fill in the non-violent, you know, translate it into non-violent language. So it might look like that. So instead of why did you do that, it's, so what do you think made it kind of difficult or challenging for you to do it this way? Were you know, was this a possible cause? You know, what could be some of the ways we maybe change it or something like that? So going at it with a question instead. And then also toning down your language. Like, if it were me, I might, something like turning it towards yourself rather than directing it, you. And then what you did was really dumb. You, instead of placing a judgment, ask. So maybe that person already thinks that they did something really dumb. So you can probably ask them, how did you feel about, you know, the activity that you did the other day, or something like that. So these are examples of, you know, how you know, foundational practices or things that I want to include just before you know, I go into, maybe at the beginning of a curriculum, the beginning of a course, I would integrate this. And then you know, you'll remember the social contract in the values pyramid. Have that values pyramid posted on the wall, or as a reminder, you know, in an online forum, that these are the values that we need to stick to as we are talking to each other, and that includes nonviolent feedback. So if we look back at those 4 activities, actually what comes out of them are both social justice skills, skills that achieve social justice, and sometimes you can also say values. And then the other thing that can come out of them is the English language skills. So we were talking about the values pyramid, and what you mentioned was that there was some consensus. Is that right? So there was consensus in there. There was active listening. So if we take a look, compromise, negotiation, communication, teamwork. So what, Colette, what you said about teamwork, it's definitely in there. Collaboration is a part of, you know, acting with a social justice lens, putting a social justice lens on whatever you do. Social thermometer, again, you're listening to each other actively. You're negotiating. If people don't agree with what you're saying, they're still listening. And then, okay, maybe if there's some consensus that can be had, we can negotiate to that. And with all of these 4 activities, there's also the speaking and listening that comes through. With the nonviolent feedback, obviously you're writing out possible language as well. So it could be the 4 skills of English. Before, because this is an English language lesson, before you do those activities, you also want to teach the vocabulary that might, you know, they might need within that activity. So for today, I jumped in there and I asked you for values because I knew that you would probably know them already. But for students, second language learners, they may not be able to produce that language straight away. So the idea is to pre-teach the vocabulary first and then take them through the consensus style of activity, like a values pyramid. The same thing for social thermometer. If there's any language that you think that they're going to need, pre-teach that. Teach before the activity happens. And the same with active listening. And with nonviolent feedback, probably you might want to do some grammar error correction as well, either while they're filling out the table or afterwards. Okay, so these are the 4 example activities I would use for, you know, just providing that safe space in order to start talking about social justice topics. Okay.
Tiff has got his hand up, just to let you know.
Oh, yes.
You're on mute.
If there was anything you would add to those ones, for example, cooperative learning. Mm-hmm. For the first table.
Yes.
So you give them tasks where the only way to actually achieve the task is to work cooperatively. There's no other way to do it. Right. Would be one, and also something called triadic assessment.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain that?
Triadic assessment is where you get assessment on a task. This would be under nonviolent feedback, but it comes from 3 ways. Students, you leave a piece of written work out with it numbered in parts, and first of all, each student gets a number, and they have to go and they all put their work on the table, and they move around, and they only analyze the number they've been asked to do. Mm-hmm. And they have a post-it note to stick on as feedback. Then you can put them in pairs, and they look at another part, and then the last part would be your feedback. So you're basically getting triangulated feedback, but the teacher's feedback is only one part of that, and it's not any more important than anyone else's.
That's right.
I really find it works really. It works really well.
So it ends up being. I think I read this on your form, Tiff, that you submitted before the webinar about the emancipatory. So if it's like everyone's voice is encouraged, again, it becomes, if you put another maybe theory onto it, it becomes democratic. So you could also say that's kind of democratic style of assessment.
Yeah.
Everybody gets their voice. It's not just the teacher's voice that's important, it's also the learners.
The idea being that if you can use your voice here, then you can use your voice when you leave classroom.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. I'm gonna maybe only play you the first part of this because, you know, this lady's quite funny, but it's also just a nice intro into CLIL. You can find it online as well.
CLIL stands for Content and Language Integrated Learning. You can think of it like this: content and language integrated learning. Let's try it. Content and language integrated learning. With CLIL, language is learned and used to build subject knowledge, which we call content. The reverse is also true. Subject knowledge becomes the motivation for students to learn new language, just as students do in native English speaker classrooms. These subjects come from many areas of learning: history, social studies, art, music, science, and math. When students are introduced to a CLIL lesson, such as a lesson on explorers, they use the 4 skills of reading, writing, listening, and speaking to learn about and discuss the subject. In addition, students analyze and evaluate the information using critical thinking skills. This allows them to understand the information more deeply.
Okay, I'm gonna skip over that because I'm kind of conscious of the time. She very nicely and you know, she put a nice kind of I don't know. I guess you guys can remember. Can you remember how it went? Content and language and integrated learning. Integrated learning. That's the only part I actually remember. But she's a really good video to watch. But what she basically says, the whole thing is that you know, you're not just learning English for learning English. You're also learning other, you know, you're learning knowledge through the language of English. Just as you would be, you know, in your native language, you'd be learning about a topic like social justice issues. You would be learning, in this case, in our classrooms, you would be learning it in the L2, in your second language of English. But also on top of that, you're learning critical thinking skills, so 21st century skills as well. And part of that, as what you said, is the teamwork, is the collaboration, the cooperation, which is required throughout a social justice themed class. And the steps that you have to take in order to, you know, create a CLIL class is first of all, you have your topic. So a topic within the overarching theme of social justice. And then you choose the vocabulary and pre-teach that. After that, you're focusing on the grammar. So you like she showed you just then, there was a text and highlights of the vocabulary and the grammar that comes along with that is showcased within that text. So that's what you do when you're choosing a reading text. You choose a text that has examples of past simple tense or examples of you know, present perfect or something. And then after the students have read it, you get them to highlight, okay, this is how those grammar structures are actually used. And the pre-teaching of the vocabulary also prepares them for the actual text itself. With the graphic organizer, for example, the values pyramid, that was an example of a graphic organizer. So, for example, if I was to teach about, you know, values, I might also start with teaching about knowledge, skills, and values. So, I might get a text that talks about knowledge, skills, and values, and then do something on knowledge, do something on skills, but also do something on values, which is the values pyramid. And then after that, use the information in some way that is creative, like drawing, creating a role play, writing a story, something like that. I'll go into this in more depth in a bit, so you can see the steps that you have to take to create this kind of lesson. Okay. So as I mentioned, knowledge, skills, and values is probably the first step I would take before using a values pyramid. I would talk about knowledge. Okay, I would actually not talk about it. I would think about the knowledge I want my students to learn about in social justice. What kind of social justice theme do I want them to talk about and discuss? And what skills do I want them to be able to practice, like cooperation, teamwork, negotiation, consensus, critical thinking skills? What values do I want them to practice while they're doing these activities? For example, like empathy and solidarity or something like that. So if we call it by a name, we could say these, the things that we need to learn about in social justice is civic knowledge. So civic knowledge is sort of, the knowledge that you have about the situations around the world, the situations outside the window, the reasons why people are being marginalized, the institutions that are causing that, the events, the processes, that are happening around the world. This is our knowledge. This incorporates or constitutes our civic knowledge. And then what we just talked about, the civic skills and civic values, those are the things that we need to practice in order to create a society that recognizes social justice. So when you're starting from education, you're starting from the KSV. You are teaching your language. You're allowing your students to practice the 4 skills, but you're also getting them to learn civic knowledge. You're also getting them to practice civic skills. You're also getting them to use, and maybe possibly, if they are really enjoying it, change their values, adopt new values, transform to become more civic-minded. So by civic-minded, I mean somebody who cares about the rest of society. Okay, so I'm going to show you a lesson that actually, and maybe have you also participate in 1 or 2 things that will demonstrate the steps of a CLIL lesson. Okay. So has anyone ever used B2B before? Hello? No? Okay, back to the board is, oh, you have used it. Okay. We call it B2B.
It's sometimes called the hot seat. And I once realized when I had a student who I think was from Iraq, and I had him in this seat and I called it the hot seat, and I thought I might want to find another word for it because it might bring back some pretty unpleasant memories. And then someone told me it's also called backs to the board. Yes,
yeah. Or, as they like to abbreviate a lot here, so we call it B2B. So this is slightly adapted because you have the word empower, for example, and then in your groups, you're supposed to, there's, the volunteer with their back to the board, you write down empower, and the group that is facing the board, they have to define empower without actually using empower itself, using that word itself. They have to define it in their own words without using these 3 words. So you're not allowed to use give, you're not allowed to use weak, you're not allowed to use people in order to define empower. Does anyone want to give an example definition of that one? How would you define empower without using give, weak, or people?
If no one else wants to go first, come on, you go first.
Go on, Carmen.
I will say, share the power inside of yourself with others.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Share that you haven't used any, like give week or people. Yeah, nice.
I know, if you told me don't use
yes,
it.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, I like it. I like it.
All right. Help others to feel stronger.
Help others to feel stronger. Nice. Yes, wonderful. Athanasio, I know it's a bit unfair, but do you have any a different definition for that? Is she typing? Okay.
She says I can't do anything right now.
How about society? Okay, this is a last example of this one. How do you want to define society without using people, group, or community?
That is more difficult. Society.
Yeah, Tiff.
Okay.
Being together with certain order.
Being together with certain orders. A collective, yeah.
Collectively shared space and the things and values that join it.
Very nice. I like it. Yes.
Athanasius got a great one. A place where individuals have to collaborate and cooperate in order to survive.
Ooh.
Wow.
Edgy. Yes, definitely survival is the key, especially these days. Okay. All right. So obviously it's the backs of the board. So you have your 3 people, whoever your group is giving the volunteer with their back to the board cues or definitions without using those 3 extra words. So you're writing these 4 words on the whiteboard. I'm going to whiz through to the next part of the lesson. So here's the graphic organizer. Before this, I would give them a text on, like I said, on knowledge, skills, and values. Maybe I would make it a pyramid reading, so that I would divide the students into groups. One student, maybe it's a group of 3. One student in that group of 3 would read about knowledge. One student in that group of 3 would read about skills, and another would read about values. And then they would teach each other what they learned from their text. Following that, they would have to fill in this Venn diagram. So, and then also add more of their ideas. So all the values that we talked about, we would add those into here. Knowledge, maybe things about civic. Can you give me an example of knowledge? What kind of civic knowledge should we have in Greece, for example?
Like your rights?
Human rights, yes. So human rights could go in there as well. But do you think that this space here between knowledge and values, if there's something that goes in between that could be both knowledge and values, that can go there?
Information.
Yes, information. That's in knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What about your right to assemble and demonstrate?
Right to assemble and demonstrate. So all your rights, information about the rights, the media, for example, where do you get your information?
Would that not cross over into values?
Okay, so there we go. If it crosses over, if it's both knowledge and values,
yeah.
If you value human rights, you would put it in this part of the Venn diagram.
Greeks love a demonstration.
Yeah, that's where it all started. So in the same way, you know, if something is both knowledge and a skill, then that would go here. If it's all three, if it's a knowledge, if it's skills, if it's values, it could go in the center. So this is what they would do the next, you know, after the reading activity and after kind of maybe looking at some of the language, the grammar and the vocabulary that goes into that, you know, talking about knowledge, skills, and values. They would fill in this Venn diagram.
What's an example of a skill, knowledge, and value?
Skill, knowledge, and value. So if you, maybe communication, you need to know what, you need to have information to be able to communicate, right? And you need to be able to use communication skills, and you need to be able to value. Thank you, Tiff. Communication. What can you think of any others? What could be all three? KSV.
But empowerment.
Empowerment. So how to empower.
Yeah.
Why would you empower, and then also what to do when you're empowering people.
It's a sub-communication skill, you could say. I would also think maybe thinking about assertiveness.
Assertiveness.
I'm not sure that it's a value. It's definitely a knowledge and a skill. Or advocacy, that's something connected like that.
If you value assertiveness over aggressiveness, or aggression, sorry, then it would be a value, right? So maybe that could be a KSV too. So this kind of diagram, it does bring up, especially with your more advanced learners, it does bring up more of that kind of discussion. Your learners will probably end up talking for hours if you don't stop them actually about this particular thing. Okay, so again, like I said, I was going to whiz through different activities in the lesson that might show you how we integrate English. So B2B was the first one, so with the vocabulary. I might follow that up with maybe getting my groups to decide, you know, because maybe the lesson is on civic education. What is a citizen actually? So they create definitions. They define for themselves on a piece of colored paper what is a citizen, and then they post it around. And then we find consensus, okay, between all of their definitions, what are the common themes? And then the KSV pyramid reading, which I explained already. And then the language awareness, which is, you know, bringing out the vocabulary and the grammar, getting them to highlight those bits of language so that they're, you know, following metacognitive strategies and really thinking about the language as well. The Venn diagram, and then after the Venn diagram, going back to their definition of citizen, and then do they want to redefine what they said about what a citizen is? You know, a citizen maybe they start to think, okay, a citizen is somebody who practices KSV. Maybe they want to add the additional part about knowledge, skills, and values into there, and then maybe on the end note have a social thermometer style activity. Okay. So what do you think? What kind of age group would you use this lesson with?
Could it be adapted for all ages? I mean, for kids, maybe they're less interested in the word citizen. It would have to be something that they relate to more. But then the values and stuff, it would be more from a child's perspective and what they value, but you could think about it in their relationship to their students and how they want to be treated in the classroom. Yeah.
Friendship, fairness, things like that. Nothing, you know, crazy like solidarity or equity or, you know, yeah, it could be. It could be adapted to any age group. Actually, obviously you have to take out if it's a younger age group, then you're not going to get a lot of discussion. But you can still touch on the knowledge, skills, and values. Because I mean, if we don't start from the young, you know, building knowledge, skills, and values, what would happen? So English language level.
So for me, that would be a very, very strong B1 class or up. But as I was looking at it, and I know this from my own experience, because this is what I do most days. And I think you can do it from, you have to really grade it. Like, it wouldn't work like that. That's quite, I'm going to use the word best. It's quite theoretical. It requires the reading skills at the beginning. But if you break it up and do it in different ways, it can work from A1.
Mm.
It just requires much more. It requires to be much more scaffolding, and maybe slightly less emphasis on different parts. But you can get there, and you can achieve a lot of the same things. It can be done. Yes,
it can be done. I've used it with A2 with you know, elementary level learners as well.
Yeah.
As long as you just go very slowly, or you scaffold a lot.
Yeah. I think you also have to give the learners time to accept this slightly different, well, completely different approach to being in a classroom, because so many of them have kind of rote learning, or the teacher is omnipotent and just tells you what the truth is, and you have to take a little bit of time to slowly get them used to the fact that we're going to talk about things in a different way, and it's going to be collaborative. And you can't expect them necessarily to unlearn that in one lesson. They might, but if it doesn't go well the first time, don't abandon it.
Yes, definitely wise words, because I think it's the same across the world. It's the same in Myanmar. It's the same in whatever classrooms they come from, whatever countries they come from. It's the teacher who is the oppressor, the person who is filling their bottle with knowledge. It's not going to be collaborative. But I think that's when you're using these activities all the time. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You're getting them into the habit, especially when they're young. They're getting used to it slowly but surely in this new style, and you can kind of take liberties with that as a result. I'm not sure about. Not so much about trauma affected students. They may take more time, but as a general rule, yeah, I would say so too. Just the last question: have you used a similar style of lesson before? Anything you would like to share? Carmen or Athanasia?
I structure as a plan in that sense. I will say no, but some of those ideas in one way and another, in my experience when I was in Argentina, I use it with my students. I will say university students and the last years of secondary school.
When you say some of those concepts, you mean like talking about knowledge, skills, and values, or breaking it down?
Yeah, I will say this type of when we were speaking about these contents, learning integrated in learning, integrated in the learning. That part for me was clinking what just remind me what I used to do it. Also in the sense of integrating the values into the teaching system or into the class, in order to empower the students. That is something that I always try to do.
Sort of like modeling the values and getting them, reminding them.
Yes,
that
reminding them. When you are teaching subjects like philosophy, pedagogy, so for example, like also sociology, these type of things, it's more easy to integrate and to play with those values and skills at the same time that you are in the classroom.
That's right. It doesn't make any sense to you know, take them apart and do it separately. Just as it doesn't make any sense to take the 4 skills apart: the reading, listening, and speaking and writing, because as a whole, you're, as a social justice practitioner or as a English language learner, you're using all of those skills and values at the same time, generally, to communicate.
Yeah, and for example, for me, something very clear always is that the reading and writing will always help you to go deep in a critical thinking. So
and there,
this is is something that they need to be a part of the same package.
Exactly, and it's, you're reading and writing to critically think about the issue, but you're also, at the same time, that language awareness piece is important when you're trying to build up their metacognitive strategies, understanding how they're learning. You know, how does this phrase fit into the larger piece, for example, things like that. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Sorry, Karen.
No, I was thinking that behind all of that, what also is playing a strong role is creativity. If you are not familiar or you are used to, you will not be getting anywhere, because for me, creativity is also one of the most democratic instruments that you can have.
Absolutely. And when you come from, as Tiff mentioned, when you come from a rote memorization background and all your creativity has been stifled, you know, it's not necessarily familiar with you. But when you start to practice it over and over again, you're starting to realize, oh, actually, I do have creativity in me somewhere.
Yes.
And I think in our context, it's really good to have a mixture of both what our students are used to back home. It's like a sense of security and familiarity, but then also to introduce these techniques. And the ultimate goal would be to have a whole class like this, but it's really good in the beginning to have that mixture, because I've found that trying to introduce the like that feeling of not knowing can be really scary and can kind of like induce trauma or trigger trauma. So it's really good to balance it and
exactly to create that kind of safe space, maintain it as well, maintain the safety.
Also, excuse me. So one point that is very important to take in account is the culture that is always playing a strong position in the background of our people. I experienced that. I am Argentinian, but I was working in an Asian context for a long time, and now working with the refugee is all the values that are immersed and sometimes unconscious in their culture play a lot of strong roles in what they are learning and how they learn and how they define the knowledge.
And this is actually another activity you could use. Has anyone ever used the iceberg activity? You have an iceberg. There's you know, the top of the iceberg is visible above the sea level, but underneath the sea level, you know, it's the stuff that you have to dive down deeper to get to, which is like the intercultural, you know, values. What you see above the water is maybe age, gender, whatever, but below the water is the more kind of the nuances, the things that you don't necessarily see until you ask people. So that you could use that as well, right? To talk about intercultural, but then you're with these, and I think this is what Tiff mentioned earlier about the democratic and the cooperative activities. You're forcing your students to cooperate. You're forcing them to collaborate every pretty much with every activity. And with that, you can be strategic as well. Maybe you have different, students from different backgrounds together in one group, and then they are kind of in their collaborations, they're also learning about each other and learning about each other's values, and the way they talk, the way they, the way they think, and things like that. So with your interaction, you're not just allowing some scaffolding and allowing some, shy learners to be supported by maybe not so shy learners. You're also kind of building that intercultural bubble within each group so that they learn from each other. Okay, I think, how are we doing for time, Colette?
Yeah, we should probably, well, it's meant to be an hour and a half, so we've got 2 minutes.
Oh gosh. Should I? Well, I did kind of create a lesson plan for you guys for this lesson anyway, because I knew that I'd probably go on a bit. I do tend to talk too much, but I think this is great, wonderful discussions. But this lesson is about the elephant and the blind man. Have you read this story before?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the lesson is about where you the different perspectives that we have, depending on the angle that we're standing at. So the story is about that, and then I think I'll share with you the lesson plan so that you can see all this in your own time. But if you look, for example, at the number 3, okay, so I just want you to do a quick trick with your computer. If you can, say, turn it around, what does the 3 turn into? And if you turn it around again on its, and try not to break anything, what does it look like from the other angle? And if you turn it around again, what does it look like from there, from that angle? So obviously online, you can do it by getting them to twiddle with their computers, but also in a classroom setting, you can have this as a piece of paper on the ground, and they are standing from different angles. So if you're standing from the right-hand side, what do you see?
M.
Mm-hmm.
M. From one side, it's an M, and then from the other side, it's
omega.
Greek alphabet.
W. One side is M.
Carmen, I was thinking the same. It's a Greek letter.
Yes. The Greek letter omega.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, it could be a Greek letter. That's also possible. That's the idea. And then if you're looking at it from top down, what would it be?
E.
Yeah. I mean, again, you can put it, if it's online, you can put it on a piece of paper. You can get them to write down a big 3 and then twiddle the paper so that they're looking from different angles. Sorry. So what do you think is the key learning point from this activity? What are we trying to say?
Everything in the world has different point of view.
That's right. Yes, there's a different point of view for every issue that we talk about, depending on the experiences that we've had.
Yes.
Yeah, depending on where we're standing.
The position, the culture.
That's right. Exactly. Our background, our experiences, everything that has formed us. That sort of frames our point of view. And so there's a nice
meme that you can find. I just put a link to it in the chat of 2 people arguing about 6 and 9, and it can be a nice visual.
Okay.
If you want to use that. Sure.
Yeah. So this activity is in addition to a video, I can again, I'll share the lesson plan, but the video is basically, actually it's quite quick. I'll just play it. Is that all right, Colette?
Fine with me. Just depends on everyone else. So
an event seen from one point of view gives one impression. Seen from another point of view, it gives quite a different impression. But it's only when you get the whole picture you can fully understand what's going on.
That's a really veritable gem right there. That's also on YouTube. So when you saw the first segment, the man running towards the woman, what did you think of the man? Did you have any ideas of what that man might be doing?
I mean, I guess judged on her posture didn't change at all. So based on what I observed from her, I assumed that he was running from something else that wasn't a threat to her.
Mm. And then if you were looking at the second part of the video, it's a different angle. It's from behind, and he's running towards a man. Did anybody kind of react in a kind of, oh no, what's he going to do to the man? Did anybody think that way?
He is the police and wanted to take something.
Yeah, maybe. For me, my initial response was, uh-oh, what's he going to do to the man? But maybe that's just because I'm jaded. But the final piece is what's happening with the guy. What does he do?
Pushing the man out of the...
So saving the man.
Out of the den, yes, saving the man.
Yeah. So it's only when the video is basically saying it's only when you get the whole picture that you really understand what is going on. So this is what the lesson is about. So you have some listening in there. You've got your storytelling first. So I would tell the story, and then I would get them to do the comprehension questions. If it was again, if it was young learners, I would get them to also maybe do a little bit of physical response. If there's a big picture of an elephant, for example, and they follow along and they do what is the actions that are being told in the story, something like that. And then they have some comprehension questions at the end. Then the 3 activity, which you guys did, then the video. So there's listening and there's speaking, there's reading, there's writing. But then at the end, you can either get them to write a story about a conflict that happened because of different perspectives, or you can get them to draw what they think about, how we have to listen to the whole picture, the whole story, something like that. Okay. I think you guys are going to agree that it's adaptable. Sorry, I'm whizzing through this. It is adaptable by age. It is adaptable to English language levels, as long as you scaffold it, and as long as you remember the principles of adult learning or child-friendly learning. So this is my final slide, I promise. The first step, choose your interesting topic. Choose your topic within the frame of social justice. And then target that K. What is the knowledge? And remember to make it achievable. It's only the one lesson. So a small bite-sized piece of knowledge. What are they going to be able to achieve? What vocabulary? Don't try to get them to learn too much. Vocabulary between 5 to 10 words would be enough. And then also target the grammar point. What's the grammar point that comes out of your reading text? Is it past simple? Is it present simple? and then choose the reading text, making sure that it's not too long, it's not too heavy, it's not too, you know, it's just enough to capture their attention and draw their, like Carmen said, just make them think critically about a specific issue. And then you can also use a graphic organizer to help them think through the issues that are captured in the text. And then finally, you end the lesson with a creative output. So again, they're kind of building up their creativity with every lesson. They're either doing role plays, they're doing simulation projects where they build something and then maybe present it. And then also possibly they could draw their feelings about values or something like that. You know, what does a beautiful, prosperous world look like? They draw that, something like that. Okay. So I think my last one was about just to say that I had already created a lesson plan, an example lesson plan for you, if that's what you wanted, and also what other support I could give you. But maybe if you want to do questions first, I'm fine with that too.
Can I just add maybe a couple of things that might be helpful for people? One, that to create your own videos where you create that perspective, you can use VLC to crop things and bring them in. So you put any video in VLC and you change the type of view, and it will crop some of the wider images out. So you can use the video to only see what's in the middle.
So that video I used just now, for example.
Yeah, you can create your own like that by bringing in the zoom of the video, and then the second time showing them the slightly bigger one and bigger one again. So you don't have to wait around for any video you want to use like that. You can use like that.
Nice.
What's it called, Tiff?
Very good.
You can do it on VLC, I think.
What is VLC?
It's a video player that plays almost any video format. There's almost nothing you can throw at VLC. It's free. There's almost nothing you can throw at it that it won't do that. Just so, for example, I had one that I used that's really similar to that, which is about it's a prank video of a Japanese racing driver, a female who goes for a driving lesson, and she's terrible, and the male driving instructor is giving her all kinds of grief. And at the outside edge of the border, it says it's got comments that will reveal to you what it is. So I just cropped it. And obviously, towards the end of the test, she starts going at high speed, and that then was the basis for a discussion about gender discrimination.
Nice.
So you can crop it. Good. So don't wait around for other people's.
Yeah, I didn't know you could use VLC for that.
If there are things along the outside that you don't want or that will give it away, you can crop it.
Okay. Does anyone have questions about the topic, about CLIL?
I sometimes swap around part 3 and part 1. So I think about the topic first. Like if I see it coming up in my course structure, then I start thinking about it. I start drawing it that way. Quite often I go 1, 2, 3, but sometimes I go 3, 2, 1. Yeah,
I mean it's language is organic, right? So it you know, if that's what they're, and it's also depending on the needs of your student. If they need to focus, or if they're resistant to, you know, things like social justice, you can probably trick them sometimes also by focusing on the grammar first, for example, and then bringing in this text. Oh, guess what? We're talking about social justice issue, something like that. Yeah, so you're starting with the grammar and then the vocabulary. Yeah, you can switch them around depending on your students' needs. Anyone else?
I think what would be really good in the interest of time is, personally, I think it's so interesting and I would love to bring this into the classroom. I'm still at the stage where I'm a bit like, I've got your lesson plans, here, so that gives me like, I can see how that would work. But you know, like this 1 to 6 is still a bit daunting. I wouldn't know how to put that into practice.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. That's natural, I think.
So maybe what would be really helpful is I don't know, the potential to maybe come in with a knowledge point, and then we have like a session together where we create a lesson plan together. Maybe that could be a thing. And perhaps with some teachers that work on the ground, I could ask around if they'd be interested, and maybe we could create that together so people can actually see how it would work step by step.
Yes. Yeah. Either that, I mean, it could be like a collaborative, if there are also teachers who prefer to read about it, you know, I can share another, you know, couple of lesson plans maybe. I mean, obviously, like there's so much there to teach and talk about, but as you said, it's a step-by-step process. You're not necessarily going to pick it up like that from a list.
I think talking through it practically is always really, like, gives you confidence, doesn't it, to do it when you leave.
I'm happy to do that.
Colette, I'm happy to share some lesson plans if you want, even just to get an idea. If you prefer not to have that kind of interfere with your own process, but if you need them, me and Rosie have got lots that we made along these lines. So
yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah, to draw ideas from and get inspiration, definitely.
Yeah, it is better to have lesson plans from different angles as well. Not like everyone has a different teaching style, so mine may be different to Tiff's. So it's good to kind of have the different perspectives, you know, how these lessons can be taught.
I kind of wish that we could get you, or maybe it's a job for Tiff, to come into the different projects we work with and do like a demonstration of a English for social justice class. And
that would be fun. Yeah,
it'd be so much fun. Maybe Tiff, as he's in Athens.
I'm very jealous. I'm very jealous, Tiff.
I think it's really great. The thing is, I can imagine all the time our context being quite, for, you know, a teacher that's not very experienced, this would be far too much for them to take on, you know, because just teaching standard English is a struggle enough in our context sometimes with all the different we have. So kind of having a demonstration in a sense would, they might not be able to replicate a whole lesson, but they would be able to see how it works in practice, and it's not just theoretical, it's possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One more thing there, that's maybe it's important to add, is that don't expect necessarily your school or your management to love you for this, regardless of what it says on the wall about their values and, you know, how they want to promote active citizens and independent learners. They won't necessarily thank you for this, and not all of your colleagues who maybe have a very set idea on what the purpose of teaching is, they won't necessarily obstruct you, but they either might not get it or they might not see the value in it. And if you can find at least one comrade, it makes life a lot easier because you can bring each other on.
It's true. It's true. I agree with that.
I've come to the understanding that if my students love it and my bosses hate it, I'm probably doing the right thing.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carmen.
It's a good thing Carmen's the boss and the teacher.
But I felt the whole structure, the whole plan holds behind empower. And that is also can be used not only in one specific area, that could go across all the areas of teaching. because what is behind is just that you believe in the others, and you are trying that learning is for everybody towards a goal, and that goal is for the society. So that will come across to all the subjects. The point is that you need to believe strongly in that.
And also, I mean, on that note as well, your as she said in the video, it's about 21st century skills as well. You know, cooperation, teamwork, all of those things. If you do get criticism or pushback, then you can say, well, you know, these are the sustainable development goals. Yeah. 21st century. 21st century skills is what we have to aim for, and as English language teachers, this is what we're doing with social justice.
I definitely think in my Greek.
Yes.
I work in a language academy in Greece called a Foresterio, and it's very by the book. You teach the book, you do the activities from the interactive whiteboard. I teach the little kids, and I try to bring in like a classroom contract. I don't speak Greek, so I wanted to get the rules from the kids. That's what I really wanted to do, but I felt like it was going to be too challenging. So I came up with some rules, and I made this wonderful poster, and I made it interactive where they like read the rule, put it on the board with the picture, and like we talk about it, and you know, do you agree? You don't agree? And my Foresterio and my boss thought it was absolutely bonkers, like absolutely crazy. She's like, you know, you have a book, you can just teach from the book. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I wanted to do this.
Oh, it's a shame. It's a real shame.
Very clear, I know.
Does Athanasia have anything to add?
He says no.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've gone over time anyway, haven't we? So, but I am happy to help out if you know, an online demo. You know, I did whiz through these model lessons, so I can take it slower if that helps. Otherwise, if Tiff wants to jump in there and be the physical demo person.
Well, or both. I mean, like you said, it's good to have different ways of doing it. So, yeah. More voices, the better.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, everybody. Sorry, Colette, did you want to say something?
I was just going to finish up. So if there's no other questions, and yeah, thank you, Zoe. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. I do hope it was useful. I definitely want to help, you know.
It's just really nice to know that you're not alone, you know, that you're not the only crazy person in your school or in your, you know, and so just when you meet other people and people describe things, that's brilliant. It was really helpful and really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, just remember that there's on the other side of the planet, there's this, you know, this crazy person with a flag going, yeah, democratic classrooms, more social justice.
Yeah.
And football on the beach.
Yeah.
And good. And yeah, I put the evaluation link in the chat, and I would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to give us your feedback. And as I always say at the end of these things, if there's any topic that you want to have covered, that you think I've missed out, or is very necessary for the context we work in, please do drop me an email, and I'll try to make it happen. But it's been lovely. Nice way to spend my Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think too much of your weekend.
Okay, you too. Have a nice time.
Yeah. Have a lovely Sunday.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.
Everybody. See you later.
See you.